Hey everyone, I'm Shelly Hanna, and today we're going to paint a sunflower. Starting out with this sunflower, I had the idea of using 5 elements of design. Those elements are line, shape, color, texture, and pattern. And as I go through this painting, I'll try to touch on those, but if you want a little more detail on these elements of design and how I incorporated them into this painting, there is an article that accompanies this video, and I'll make sure to leave a link in the description below. Of course, you can see that I started with line, but I thought about line in a couple different ways. One was outlining everything, obviously, and then the other was the directional line of the sunflower. So there was a strong diagonal line that I used to create this composition. I had to cut out a lot of stuff out of here because I just was so unsure about how I wanted to approach this. If you've seen my other video where I paint a rose, I had a major struggle there. And I mean, portraits are really my happy place. And I like to think of landscapes and still lifes as, portraits of flowers and the land and everything. But for some reason, it doesn't gel as well with me as painting something that has eyes looking back at me. So I thought I would continue to try to increase my skill in painting a flower, and this sunflower caught my attention. Yellow is not my favorite color, especially when it's predominant in a painting. So that was kind of a challenge for me as well. I kept wanting to tone back the yellow, but at the same time, I knew that the color, which is an element of design, was really key to the sunflower looking like a sunflower, in that it needed to have a very high chroma or a very saturated yellow in order to pop off and read as a sunflower. As I progress with this painting, I was adding in a lot of layers onto the petals to really give that idea of the texture of the petals. And I knew later in the painting I was going to go back in with a little bit of a thicker painting approach, or more of an impasto painting approach, to increase the texture even more. And texture is another element of design, and it just helps to, when you add texture in, it just feels more satisfying to look at rather than seeing something that's really flat. You've got all this dimension, and if you paint the paint very thickly on there, you'll have the actual dimension of the paint on there as well. So, and we've all seen Van Gogh's sunflowers and how beautifully textured those are. So I had a little bit of that, the Van Gogh thing in the back of my mind. But I'm telling you, the guy really knew what he was doing when he was painting those sunflowers, because they certainly were beautiful. And I don't know how he did it, but that's the beauty of continuing to do these studies. You get a real appreciation for what the masters brought to their subject matter. And I have never painted a sunflower before, and I sure did learn a few things. I learned that Van Gogh was really good at what he did, and I learned that I am still not that great at painting flowers, but I'm trying. So I think it's always important to keep trying. And one day I'm going to paint a flower that I am just going to be so proud of. And I was very proud of this flower in particular, but I don't know. I think there's still an essence or a feeling that I'd like to go for. And I don't know, I haven't gotten there yet. I think that maybe I have this conflict between art and design a little bit, because I do have a degree in design. And I spent most of my professional career as a designer and doing design work, and I still love to do design work. So this flower has a little bit more of a graphic or illustrative quality to it, and which is great, but I think the painter in me wanted to see a more painterly effect. Now, one thing you'll notice is that the center of the sunflower keeps changing. It keeps going back and forth from being more simple to more complex and then back to simple again. And that's because I wanted the center of the sunflower to be more abstract, but it wasn't working. It looked weird. So I kept painting it out and then going back in and putting back detail and then painting it out again. And I don't know what I was thinking when I was doing that part. So I did cut out a lot of that back and forth for the center of the sunflower, but you can see I'm going around the outskirts of the painting and I'm going back in and painting the background in again. I'm adding a little bit more of a blue tone to it because blue is a complementary color to the yellows and golds. That color choice helped the yellow to really pop off the background a little bit more rather than just being on that warm white background. And the background is really one of the things I did with the color in that you'll be able to see at the very end is that I have warm and cool tones in the background, and it's very loose. And I love mixing the warm tones with cool tones. A lot of times I'll use a little bit of cobalt teal, and that cobalt teal placed next to a warmer yellow or orange color just adds a little bit of vibration and makes things more lively. So what I'm doing here is adding yet another layer onto the petals, which is creating more of that textured look that I'm wanting, more of a dimensional look. And at this stage, I believe I'm using a little bit of the liquid impasto to make the paint have a little more body to it. And here I go back in and I finally decided what I'm going to do with the center of the sunflower, and I decided to make it more realistic. And so I was using the element of pattern to create the disc florets that are in the center of the sunflower. And pattern is an important element in any painting or design. Usually you'll see it repeating, which you do see with the disc florets. There are multiple little stems in there. And then also with the petals that surround the flower. And since I already had the dark color on my brush, I decided to go ahead and put my signature in there. And of course, I always screw up my signature, so it's always good to have a little bit of the background paint handy so you can clean up any mistakes that you make. And then for the rest of this painting, I'm just putting on more and more layers, mixing the paint with a little bit of liquid impasto again for that dimensional look. And at the end, it's always good to step back and just see where you might need to add a few little finishing touches, which I'm doing here. And this is the final result of the sunflower painting. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and be sure to check out my other videos here on this channel, or stop by my website, shellyhannafineart.com. I have tons of tutorials there for you.